The sound of an alloy rim cracking at 25 miles per hour is distinct. It isn't a thud, and it isn't a bang. It is a sickening metallic crunch that vibrates up the steering column, travels through your arms, and settles like a heavy stone directly in the pit of your stomach. It is the sound of money leaving your bank account at the speed of sound. My coffee, which had been resting peacefully in the center console of my brand-new Silverado, decided to join the party. It launched itself vertically, performing a perfect backflip before coating the dashboard, the gear shift, and the entire front of my khaki pants in scalding hot hazelnut roast. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt in the middle of Oakwood Estates' prestigious winding drive, the rain hammering against the roof of the truck like God was personally playing the drums of my misery. I didn't scream, not yet. I just sat there, gripping the leather steering wheel, breathing in the scent of wet dog, new car, smell, and burnt coffee. That, I whispered to the rain-streaked windshield, was deep. I killed the engine and stepped out into the deluge. It was a Tuesday morning, 7:45 a.m., the time of day when suburban life is supposed to be a symphony of efficiency. Commuters commuting, school buses buzzing, joggers jogging. Instead, I was standing in a puddle, staring at the front passenger side of my truck. The tire was already hissing, a slow, mournful whistle of death. The rim looked like someone had taken a giant bite out of it. And there, just 3 feet back, was the culprit. We called it the crater. It wasn't a pothole. A pothole is a nuisance. This was a geological event. It was jagged, filled with murky brown water, and roughly the size of a jacuzzi. It had been there since the last thaw in March. It was now October. I had watched it grow like a neglected child, getting wider and deeper with every storm, waiting for a victim. Today, it had chosen me. "Got you good, huh?" Looked up, wiping rain from my eyes. Mr. Henderson was standing on the sidewalk under a massive golf umbrella, his ancient poodle, Mr. Pickles, shivering in a yellow raincoat beside him. Henderson was 80 years old and lived for the drama of the neighborhood. "It killed the rim, Frank," I said, my voice flat. "The tire is shredded." Henderson whistled low. "Third one this week. Saw the Amazon van hit it on Sunday. Driver dropped a package right in the water. My wife's compression socks are still drying out." "Why hasn't the HOA fixed this?" I asked, kicking the asphalt, which only resulted in wet socks. "I pay $400 a month in dues, Frank. $400 for what? To drive an obstacle course to get to my own driveway?" "Budget's tight," Henderson said, adjusting his glasses. "Brenda says asphalt is at a premium." Brenda, I spat the name out like a piece of gristle. Brenda was the HOA president, the supreme leader of Oakwood Estates, a woman who once measured my grass with a ruler and fined me $50 because my blades were 1/8 of an inch above regulation height during a drought. "She's probably awake," Henderson offered helpfully. "She likes to patrol on trash days." I looked at my truck. It was listing to the right, crippled. I looked at the crater, the murky water rippling innocently. Then I looked at my coffee-stained pants. "I'm going to have a chat with her," I said. "Good luck, son," Henderson chuckled, pulling Mr. Pickles along. "She's in a mood. Someone left a recycling bin out past 6:00 p.m. yesterday." I left the truck right there, hazards flashing, looking like a monument to suburban failure, and marched up the street. I didn't care about the rain. I was fueled by the pure, uncut rage that only a homeowner with a destroyed suspension can feel. Brenda lived in the corner house, the one with the white columns that looked like they belonged on a plantation in 1860, not a split level in Ohio. Her lawn was manicured to a level of perfection that suggested she cut it with scissors. I didn't knock. I rang the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. The door swung open, and there she was. Brenda. She was wearing a floral blouse that assaulted the eyes and holding a clipboard like a weapon. Her hair was a helmet of hairspray that the rain wouldn't dare penetrate. "Mike," she said, not as a greeting, but as an observation. Her eyes immediately dropped to my pants. "You've spilled something. It looks unprofessional." "Brenda," I said, ignoring the fashion critique. "My truck is dead in the middle of Oak Drive." "I see that," she said, stepping out onto the porch, but staying under the overhang. "You can't park there, Mike. That's a fire lane. Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the bylaws clearly states that on-street parking is prohibited between the hours of—" "I didn't park there," I snapped, my voice rising an octave. "I crashed there. I hit the pothole. The big one. The one I have. Emailed you about 5 times since July. It ate my rim, Brenda. It shredded my tire." She sighed, a long, suffering sound, as if my destroyed vehicle was a personal inconvenience to her morning routine. She tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Lower your voice, please. The Johnsons have a newborn. The Johnsons have an SUV that's going to be next." I pointed back down the street where my hazards were blinking like a distress signal. "You need to fix the road, today. I want that hole filled before I get back from the mechanic." Brenda gave me a tight, condescending smile. The kind of smile a kindergarten teacher gives a child who just ate paste. "Mike, we've discussed this. The infrastructure committee has reviewed the road situation. And we simply don't have the allocation for asphalt repairs this quarter. The budget is tied up." "Tied up in what?" I demanded. "We haven't had snow removal in 2 years. The community pool has been green since Memorial Day. Where is the money going?" Brenda stood up straighter, clutching her clipboard to her chest. "Beautification, Mike. Property values are linked directly to curb appeal. Surely you noticed the new installation at the East Gate." I blinked, rain dripping off my nose. "You mean the metal thing? The rusty, twisty tie-looking thing?" "It is an abstract sculpture titled Ascension of the Spirit," she corrected sharply. "It cost $35,000. It sets a tone of elegance for the community." I felt a blood vessel in my eye twitch. "You spent 35 grand on a piece of scrap metal while the main road looks like the surface of the moon?" "Art is subjective, Mike. Road maintenance is scheduled for next fiscal year, if we have a surplus." She looked at her watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to document a violation at the Miller residence. They have a garden gnome that exceeds the height restriction." "Brenda," I stepped closer, water pooling around my shoes. "I'm looking at $1,200 in damage, minimum. The HOA is liable for this. It's negligence." "Read your bylaws, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with poisonous honey. "Common areas are use at your own risk. And frankly, if you were driving the posted speed limit of 15 miles per hour, you would have had ample time to navigate around the imperfection." "Imperfection?" I laughed, a manic, wet sound. "It's a canyon. It has its own ecosystem." "Move the truck, Mike," she said, turning back to her door. "Or I'll have to call the towing company. And you know they charge extra for emergency removal." The door clicked shut. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the white wood grain. I wanted to kick the door. I wanted to rip up the perfectly edged begonias lining her walkway. But I didn't. I was a civilized man. I was a taxpayer. I was a guy who just wanted to get to work. I walked back to my truck. I called a tow truck myself. I waited in the rain for 45 minutes. When the driver, a burly guy named Sal, showed up, he took one look at the pothole and shook his head. "Oakwood Estates, huh?" Sal said as he hooked up the chains. "I'm in here 3 times a week. This hole put my kid through dental school." "Glad I could contribute to his education," I muttered, climbing into the cab of the tow truck. The rest of the day was a blur of misery. The mechanic confirmed my fears. Bent rim, destroyed tire, and a damaged control arm. Total bill, $150. I had to rent a Kia Soul while the truck was in the shop, a car that made me feel like I was driving a toaster. I got home around 6:00 p.m. The rain had stopped, leaving the neighborhood slick and gray. I pulled the rental car into my driveway, careful to skirt the edge of the crater, which was now filled to the brim with water, reflecting the streetlights like a black mirror. I walked to the mailbox, hoping for maybe a coupon or a letter from a friend. Anything to cheer me up. Inside was a single white envelope. The return address was embossed in gold foil. Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear Resident, it has come to the attention of the board that a disabled vehicle, Chevrolet Silverado, license plate 445 GTR, was parked in the roadway at 8:00 a.m. on Tuesday, October 14th, blocking the flow of traffic and creating an unsightly obstruction. Furthermore, upon inspection of your driveway this evening, it was noted that a commercial rental vehicle is present. Please be advised that commercial vehicles must be garaged at all times. Violation 1. Impediment of traffic, $100. Violation. Unsightly vehicle maintenance in public view, $50. Violation. Unapproved rental vehicle. Warning. Total due, $150. Sincerely, Brenda Miller, HOA President. I lowered the letter. I looked at the house. I looked at the rental car. I looked at the dark, gaping maw of the pothole in the street. Something inside me broke. It wasn't a loud break like the rim of my truck. It was a quiet, structural failure of my moral compass. I walked inside. My wife, Sarah, was in the kitchen making lasagna. She took one look at my face and put down the spatula. "How bad is it?" she asked. $1,500 for the truck, I said, my voice eerily calm. And Brenda just fined me $150 for crashing into the hole she refuses to fix. Sarah winced. "Oh, Mike, I'm sorry. Maybe we can appeal?" "Appeal?" I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "You don't appeal to a dictator, Sarah. You revolt." I walked past her, down the hall, and into the garage. I didn't turn on the main light. I just clicked on the workbench lamp. I rummaged through the shelves, pushing aside half-empty cans of stain and boxes of nails. I was looking for my supplies. I found them in the bottom drawer of the tool chest, remnants from a project 3 years ago when we marked the property line for a fence Brenda never let us build. Marking paint, industrial grade, inverted tip for ground application. I had 3 cans, neon pink, construction orange, lime green. I shook the neon pink can. The metal ball inside rattled loudly in the quiet garage. Clack, clack, clack. It was the sound of war. "Mike?" Sarah called from the doorway. "What are you doing?" I turned to her. I must have looked like a madman, still wearing my coffee-stained khakis, holding a can of spray paint like a grenade. "I'm going to fix the road, Sarah," I said. "You're going to fill the potholes?" she asked, hopeful. "No," I said, a dark smile spreading across my face. "I'm going to make sure nobody ever misses them again. I'm going to make sure Brenda sees them every time she closes her eyes. I shoved the cans into the pockets of my hoodie. I grabbed a flashlight. I pulled a black beanie over my head. "I'll be back in 20 minutes, I said. "Mike, don't do anything illegal," she warned, though she didn't move to stop me. She hated Brenda, too. Last Christmas, Brenda had reported our wreath for being too rustic. "It's not illegal," I said, stepping out the side door into the cool night air. "It's art, just like the rusty twisty tie at the gate. It's beautification." The street was quiet. Most of the neighbors were inside watching TV or eating dinner. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows. I moved like a shadow myself, creeping down the driveway toward the crater. I stood over it. In the moonlight, it looked even bigger, a jagged scar on the face of the earth. I pulled out the neon pink. I popped the cap. I didn't want to just circle it. That's what utility workers do. That's boring. I needed to create something that demanded attention, something that screamed, "Look at me! I am here and I am hideous!" I thought about the article I'd read online months ago about the guy in England. Wanksy, they called him. A hero of the people. I crouched down. The asphalt was still damp, but the paint was solvent-based. It would stick. I started at the base of the pothole. I drew 2 large, perfectly symmetrical circles in neon pink, using the width of the pothole to determine the scale. Then I extended a long, shaft-like oval extending from the circles, encompassing the entire length of the crater. I added details. Veins in lime green. An artistic flourish at the tip in construction orange. It was crude. It was immature. It was undeniably a giant, glowing phallus. And it was magnificent. I stood back to admire my work. The bright neon colors popped violently against the black asphalt. You could see it from space. You could definitely see it from Brenda's front porch. But I wasn't done. The crater was just the beginning. I walked down the street, my eyes scanning the pavement. There was the ankle breaker 3 houses down. The suspension killer near the mailboxes. The cluster of small ones near the stop sign that felt like driving over a rumble strip. I hit them all. I painted a lopsided neon green dong around the drain cover that had sunken 3 inches. I painted a massive orange vein-riddled masterpiece around the crack that spanned the entire width of the cul-de-sac. I painted a pink, double-headed surprise around the 2 potholes, sitting side by side near the Hendersons' driveway. By the time I was finished, Oak Drive looked like the notebook of a bored hormonal teenager with an unlimited budget for neon paint. It was a gallery of indecency, a boulevard of anatomical inaccuracy. I shook the last can. Empty. My hands were covered in pink mist. My heart was racing. I felt alive for the first time in years. I snuck back into the garage, disposed of the empty cans in the bottom of the trash bin, buried under the coffee grounds so Brenda wouldn't see them on trash day, and walked back into the kitchen. Sarah was plating the lasagna. She looked at me. She saw the fleck of neon pink on my cheek. "Well?" she asked. "The infrastructure has been highlighted," I said, washing my hands in the sink. "Is it bad?" "It's terrible," I said, sitting down at the table. "It's the worst thing I've ever done. Brenda is going to have a stroke." I took a bite of lasagna. It tasted like victory. I slept like a baby that night. I dreamed of smooth roads and affordable car repairs. The next morning, the scream woke me up. It wasn't a scream of terror. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated outrage. It sounded like a banshee had stubbed its toe. I rolled over and checked the clock. 6:30 a.m. "It begins," I whispered. I got out of bed, threw on a robe, and walked to the front window. I peeled back the curtain just an inch. There was a crowd gathering. The school bus had just stopped at the corner. A group of middle schoolers were standing around the crater, pointing and laughing so hard they were doubled over. One kid was taking a selfie with it. And there, in the center of the road, was Brenda. She was wearing her bathrobe and fuzzy slippers. She was vibrating. She was spinning in a circle, looking from one neon drawing to the next. Her mouth was opening and closing, but no sound was coming out anymore. She was overloaded. I watched as she stormed toward my house. She knew. Of course she knew. I was the only one who had openly threatened her the day before. The doorbell rang. It didn't stop ringing. She was leaning on it. "Mike," Sarah hissed from the bed. "She's here." "I'll handle it," I said, tightening the belt of my robe. I'm the artist, after all. I walked downstairs, took a deep breath, and opened the door. "Good morning, Brenda," I said cheerfully. "Lovely day for a walk?" Brenda looked like she was about to explode. Her face was a shade of purple that clashed horribly with the neon pink visible over her shoulder. "You!" she seethed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You pervert! You vandal! Look at what you've done!" I stepped out onto the porch and made a show of looking at the street. I gasped. A theatrical, hand-over-the-mouth gasp. "Oh my God," I said. "Brenda, who would do such a thing?" "Don't play dumb with me, Mike," she screamed, spit flying. "I know it was you. You were threatening me yesterday. You were angry about the pothole." "I was angry about the damage to my truck," I corrected calmly. "But this is... well, it's certainly visible, isn't it? Nobody's going to hit that pothole today. It's got a giant neon safety ring around it. Sure, the shape is a bit avant-garde, but you can't deny the utility." "It's pornography!" she shrieked. "On a public street. There are children, Mike. Children!" "Actually, it's a private street," I said, quoting her from yesterday. "And technically, is it pornography? Or is it just abstract art? Like the ascension of the spirit? Maybe this is ascension of the infrastructure." Brenda made a noise like a tea kettle boiling over. "I am calling the police. I am calling the lawyers. I am calling the pressure washing company. You are going to pay for this, Mike. You are going to lose your house." "You have no proof," I said, crossing my arms. "Did you see me do it?" "I don't need to see it. I know." "Innocent until proven guilty, Brenda. That's America." She pulled out her phone and started dialing furiously. "We'll see about that. Stay right there. Do not move." She marched back to the edge of the driveway, guarding the painted pothole like a sentinel, barking orders into her phone. I went back inside and poured myself a cup of coffee. I stood by the window and watched. Within 20 minutes, a white van pulled up. Sal's pressure washing and concrete cleaning. It was the same Sal who had towed my truck yesterday. I watched Sal get out of the van. He looked tired. He walked over to Brenda, who was gesturing wildly at the neon phallus. I couldn't resist. I grabbed my mug and walked back outside. "Morning, Sal," I called out. Sal looked at me, then looked at the drawing, then looked back at me. A slow grin spread across his face. He recognized the pothole. "Morning, Mike," Sal said. "Nice landscaping." "He did this!" Brenda yelled at Sal. "I want it removed immediately. Blast it off. Use the highest setting. I want this filth gone before the news at noon." Sal walked over to the edge of the hole. He kicked the asphalt with his steel-toed boot. A chunk of loose pavement crumbled into the water. "Lady," Sal said, scratching his chin, "I can't pressure wash this." "What do you mean you can't?" Brenda demanded. "I'm hiring you. Do your job. Look at the substrate, Sal said, pointing at the crumbling road. This isn't solid concrete. This is asphalt soup. If I hit this with 4,000 psi of water to get that industrial paint off, I'm not just going to remove the paint. I'm going to blow the rest of the road apart. You'll have a hole 6 feet wide instead of 3, Brenda stared at him. I don't care. I want the picture gone. I also got to tell you, Sal continued, leaning against his van. My liability insurance doesn't cover structural demolition of failed roadways. If I blast this and a car drives into the new, bigger hole, that's on me. I ain't touching it. You are refusing service? Brenda looked like she was going to slap him. I'm refusing to be liable for your sinkhole, ma'am, Sal said. He looked at me and winked. You need a paving crew, not a washer. Call me when you fix the road. I'll clean the driveway. Sal got back in his van and drove off. Brenda stood alone in the street, vibrating with rage. The neon-pink dong seemed to be mocking her in the morning light. I'm calling the sheriff, she screamed at my house, though I hadn't said a word. I'm having you arrested, I toasted her with my coffee mug. Make sure they don't hit the pothole on the way in, Brenda, I yelled. It's clearly marked now. She let out a primal scream and stomped back to her house. I went inside and sat down on the couch. My hands were trembling slightly, but I felt a strange sense of calm. The war had started. I had fired the first shot, and thanks to Sal, the paint was staying. I didn't know it then, but things were about to get much, much crazier. The police were coming, the news was coming, and I was about to become the most famous accidental artist in the state. But for now, I just watched the cars slow down. Every single one of them saw the paint. Every single one of them swerved to avoid the hole. For the first time in 6 months, nobody hit the crater. It works, I whispered. It actually works. 2 hours later, the flashing lights arrived. You have to admire the response time of the sheriff's department when an affluent white woman claims there is a sex crime in progress involving municipal infrastructure. 2 cruisers pulled up, blocking the street completely. It was overkill, but Brenda loved a spectacle. I was sitting on my front porch steps, whittling a stick. I don't whittle. I don't even own a whittling knife. I was using a cheese knife from the kitchen. But I felt it added a certain rustic, unbothered aesthetic to the tableau I was creating. Officer Miller and Officer Davis stepped out. Miller looked young, maybe 25, with the eager look of a man who joined the force to catch bank robbers, but ended up mediating disputes about fence lines. Davis was older, shaped like a barrel, and looked like he had seen every variation of suburban stupidity the world had to offer. Brenda intercepted them before they even closed their car doors. Officers, thank God, he's right there, the vandal, the pervert. She was pointing at me with a trembling finger. Officer Davis hitched up his belt and looked at the road. He stared at the crater. He stared at the neon-pink outline. He stared at the lime-green veins. He tilted his head to the left, then to the right. Well, Davis said, his voice gravelly, that's vibrant. It's obscene, Brenda shrieked. Arrest him. Indecent exposure, vandalism, destruction of private property, emotional distress. The officers walked over to me. I stood up, dusting off my khakis. Morning, officers, I said politely. Sir, Officer Davis nodded. Your neighbor alleges you painted that on the roadway. I did, I admitted immediately. Brenda gasped. He confessed. Cuff him. Ma'am, please. Davis held up a hand. He looked back at me. Why? Officer, look at that hole, I said, gesturing to the masterpiece. I hit that yesterday. It did $1,500 in damage to my truck. The HOA has refused to fix it for 6 months. They claim they can't see it. They claim it's not a priority. So I prioritized it. I applied high-visibility safety markings to a dangerous road hazard. Safety markings? Officer Miller choked, turning away to hide a smile. Sir, it's a wiener. It's an abstract representation of the screwing I'm getting on my HOA dues, I countered. But primarily, it is a warning. Notice how the cars are slowing down? I'm saving axles, officer. I'm a public servant. It's graffiti, Brenda yelled. It's permanent damage. Actually, I interjected, I used construction marking paint. It's chalk-based. It'll wash away in a few heavy rains. Unlike the pothole, which will be there until the next ice age if Brenda has her way. Officer Davis looked at the paint. He scuffed it with his boot. It didn't smudge, but it looked temporary enough. Is this a private road? Davis asked Brenda. Yes, it belongs to the Oakwood Estates Association, Brenda said proudly, which I am the president of. Then it's a civil matter, Davis said, turning back to his cruiser. Brenda froze. Excuse me? Private property dispute, Davis shrugged. He didn't damage the road, ma'am. The road is already broken. He just colored it. You want to sue him for the cost of paint removal? That's your right. But I can't arrest a man for using sidewalk chalk on a hole you own. But it's a penis, Brenda screamed, forgetting her think of the children stance for a moment. First Amendment is a tricky thing, ma'am, Davis said, opening his car door. And technically, without the detailed bits, it could just be a rocket ship or a mushroom. Have a nice day. Officer Miller looked at me as he got into the passenger seat. He gave me a subtle thumbs up below the window line. As they drove away, Brenda turned to me. Her face was no longer purple. It was a pale, icy white. You think you've won? She whispered. You have no idea who you're messing with. I will fine you into bankruptcy. I will put a lien on your house. I will have the bylaws rewritten specifically to destroy you. Brenda, I said, smiling. I'm just getting started. I went inside. I waited until 2:00 a.m. The first drawing was an impulse. The second wave was a military operation. I dressed in all black, sweatpants, hoodie, balaclava. I looked like a ninja who had let himself go. I loaded a backpack with 6 cans of paint I had bought at Home Depot 3 towns over, paid in cash, obviously. I hit the streets. I didn't just target the potholes, I targeted the cracks, the sunken grates, the uneven seams. I painted the twins around a pair of potholes near the Henderson place. I painted the Long John along a 10-foot fissure near the community mailbox. I painted a massive, sprawling, multicolored mural around a cluster of holes at the entrance gate. I called that one the board meeting. I was like a phantom. I moved silently, the hiss of the aerosol cans the only sound in the night. I was fueled by adrenaline and a deep, simmering hatred for bureaucratic incompetence. When I woke up the next morning, the neighborhood text group was blowing up. Karen, 304. OMG, has anyone seen the street? Dave, 306. It looks like an anatomy textbook exploded. Mike, me. Disgusting. Who would do this? Also, watch out for the hole near the mailbox. It's huge. I looked out the window. It was beautiful. It was undeniable. You couldn't drive 5 feet in Oakwood Estates without staring directly at a neon representation of male genitalia. And then, the van arrived. It wasn't a pressure washing van. It was a white van, with a satellite dish on top and the logo of Action News 5 on the side. "Showtime," I said to Sarah, who was currently burying her face in a pillow, groaning. "Please don't go out there," she begged. "I have to," I said, checking my hair in the mirror. "The people need a voice." I walked out just as the reporter was setting up. It was Chad, the guy with the perfect hair and the teeth that looked like they cost more than my truck. He was standing in front of the crater, looking very serious. "Excuse me," I called out, jogging down the driveway. "Are you guys covering the infrastructure crisis?" Chad's eyes lit up. He needed a soundbite. "Sir, are you a resident here? Can you tell us what's going on?" The cameraman swung the lens toward me. I put on my best concerned suburban dad face. "It's just a tragedy, Chad," I said, shaking my head. "We pay our dues, we take care of our lawns, and yet the roads are left to rot. It's a safety hazard. Just yesterday my suspension was destroyed by this very hole." "And the artwork?" Chad asked, gesturing to the neon phallus. "Vandalism," I said solemnly. "Or perhaps a cry for help? Maybe it's a desperate attempt by a rogue citizen to highlight the dangers we face every day. I mean, look at it. You can't miss it now. Before, it was a hidden trap. Now, it's a beacon, a rude, throbbing beacon of safety." "And here comes the HOA president now," Chad said, looking past me. Brenda was running. She wasn't walking. She was sprinting in heels, waving her arms. She saw the camera and tried to fix her hair, but it was too late. She looked like a woman on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "Turn that camera off," she yelled. "This is private property. You have no right." "Ma'am, we're standing on the public easement," Chad said smoothly, holding the microphone out to her. "Brenda Miller, correct? Residents are saying you've ignored these potholes for months. Is that why the pothole Picasso struck?" "Pothole Picasso," I whispered. "Nice." "There is no neglected maintenance," Brenda lied, her eyes darting around wildly. "We are on a schedule. This filth is the real crime. I am a victim here." "But Brenda," I chimed in, "didn't you say yesterday that there was no budget for repairs because we bought the Ascension of the Spirit statue?" Brenda glared at me with the heat of 1,000 suns. "Shut up, Mike." "Wait," Chad pressed, smelling blood. "You spent the road repair budget on a statue?" "It's art!" Brenda screamed. "It's culture! Something you people wouldn't understand." She grabbed a picnic blanket she had dragged along and tried to throw it over the pothole. But the blanket was too small. It covered the hole, but the neon balls were still sticking out on either side. "It's not working, Brenda," I said helpfully. "Cut the feed!" she shrieked at the cameraman. She lunged for the lens. The cameraman stepped back. Chad signed off. Reporting live from Oakwood Estates, where tensions and other things are rising. Back to you, Diane. The segment aired at noon. It went viral by 1:00 p.m. By 3:00 p.m., the hashtags were trending. Pothole Picasso, hashtag Brenda's balls, hashtag fix the dong. At 4:00 p.m., a black sedan pulled up to Brenda's house. A man in a very expensive suit got out. He was carrying a briefcase. This was the regional director of the property management company that oversaw our HOA. The big boss. He didn't knock. He walked right in. I sat on my porch, drinking a beer. Henderson walked over with Mr. Pickles. "Saw you on TV," Henderson grinned. "You have a face for radio, Mike." "Thanks, Frank." "My granddaughter says you're a legend on TikTok," he added. "She wants to know if you do commissions." "Strictly pro bono work," I said. We watched as the black sedan left. Then we watched as Brenda's blinds closed tight. She didn't come out for her evening patrol. She didn't come out to measure grass. The next morning, The sound of heavy machinery woke me up. It wasn't a pressure washer. It was a rumble. A deep, earth-shaking vibration. I looked out the window. It was a convoy. 3 dump trucks, 2 steamrollers, a paving machine, and a crew of 20 men in orange vests. They weren't just filling the potholes. They were resurfacing the entire street. I walked out with my coffee. The foreman was directing traffic. "Morning!" I yelled over the noise. "Morning," the foreman grunted. "You the guy?" "What guy?" "The artist," he smirked. "I cannot confirm or deny," I said. "Well," he spat on the ground. "Corporate called. Said they wanted every inch of paint covered immediately. Said money was no object. They're paying rush rates. Triple time." I watched as the steamroller flattened a pile of steaming hot asphalt over the crater. The neon pink disappeared under a layer of smooth, black perfection. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I walked back to my mailbox. There was a letter inside. Not from Brenda. From the management company. "Dear Mr. Wilson, enclosed, please find a check for $1,600 to cover the repairs to your vehicle as a gesture of goodwill. We apologize for the inconvenience regarding the roadway conditions. Please be advised that Ms. Miller has stepped down from her position as president, effective immediately due to health reasons. We trust this concludes the matter. Sincerely, Oakwood Management Group." I held the check up to the sun. It was real. I looked at the street. The pavers were moving fast. The Long John was gone. The twins were buried. The entire gallery of indecency was being erased, replaced by the smooth, dark canvas of a freshly paved road. Sarah came out onto the porch. She wrapped her arms around my waist. "You did it," she said, sounding genuinely impressed. "You actually beat the HOA." "I didn't just beat them," I said, putting my arm around her. "I inspired them. I motivated them. I helped them find the budget they didn't know they had." "Brenda is moving," Sarah said softly. "The for sale sign is going up tomorrow. Henderson told me." "Good riddance," I said. The paving crew finished by sunset. The street was pristine. It was the smoothest road in the county. I got in the rental Kia and drove it up and down the block just to feel the lack of bumps. It was like gliding on air. I parked in the driveway and got out. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. The birds were singing. The smell of fresh asphalt hung in the air. The smell of victory. I walked to the edge of the lawn. I looked up. The streetlight directly in front of my house flickered. Psst. Then it went dark. It had been flickering for 3 months. I had emailed the city. I had emailed the new HOA board. Nobody had come to fix it. It was dark, dangerous, and annoying. I looked at the pristine, black asphalt of the sidewalk directly beneath the pole. It was a blank canvas. I reached into my pocket. I still had 1 can left. Construction orange. I shook it. Click-clack. I looked at the dark streetlight. I looked at the can. "Honey?" I called out to Sarah. "Where's the ladder?" "Mike," she warned from the porch. "Don't push your luck." I smiled, capping the can and tossing it gently into the air before catching it. "Just checking," I said. I walked back inside, the check in my pocket, the road smooth beneath my feet. The war was over. But the artist? The artist is always watching, and the world is full of things that need fixing.